pull up documents on this?
Mhm.
People don't see them correct unless I screen share.
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so you can do docs, just not screen share.
Okay.
And we are live.
We are live.
I will call Town Board Workshop number 38 to order and have the clerk note that all town board members are present. We also have our Highway Superintendent, Richard Crawford, and our Town Attorney, Peter Godfrey, in attendance tonight. Item number 1 is agenda review for the regular meeting. Does anybody have anything on that?
I have an item from our old business related to the gazebo. I'm sure you were all anticipating this. I heard back from Principal Sikora. They were super excited about the possibility of collaboration, but they're just not able to complete the project at this time. So we can go ahead with the traditional bid award tonight.
Okay. Anything else? Item 2 is plow permitting. Jen or Dick, which one wants to go first?
So Dick brought this up a month or so ago. He's looked at things that happen in other communities and is approaching this from both the town board member level and highway superintendent, because he's fulfilled both roles. He wants us to look closely at some kind of permitting process.
So years ago, at least 6 to 8 years ago, the town board at that time looked at permitting snow plowing. And at that time, it was decided that we would look at doing public education to combat the issues that arise with a great amount of private plow drivers that plow for our island residents. And what occurs is they plow snow across the street and deposit it in the road, which is an illegal act and under New York state law. So we've looked at it for the last year. I've talked with our local police officers about it. And they also have some belief that this will be a help and a deterrent of trying to educate and also let these people know that you can't push snow, first of all, across the street. And we get a lot of calls from residents about plow drivers that deposit snow in their yards, and their yards aren't even being plowed by said plower. So we've looked at various towns throughout Western New York, and we are one of the very few that does not have a permitting process available for this. So before you, you have a application that we would like to utilize. And we would like to work with the town clerk to have the permit collected, fee paid right in her office, taking the fee and permitting those drivers that wish to plow snow in the town of Grand Island. And they would be required to fill out, it's $25 per permit. And they would be required to fill these out for other vehicles so that we have a record of where they're plowing, because there are many, many issues that do occur throughout the winter. Questions?
Does this require local law?
It does.
So we will have to get that drafted and put that on one of our regular meeting agendas,
Sure.
hopefully for the next one, if you want to implement that this year. Will the plow operators have a sticker for their window, or how is this going to work for them?
We are proposing a sticker for their window. They need to show, when they fill out their application, proof of insurance. Workman's comp is also a form that must accompany the permit. And
Insurance requirements will be laid out by our town attorney.
yeah,
Mike.
So Dick, have we ever enforced, if it's against the law to do it, I'm not convinced that we would still have to enforce it with the law enforcement. Why don't we just skip the middleman, the permitting process, and go right to law enforcement and ticket, just like for parking?
Because the only way to do that is to catch them in the act. And that's the biggest problem. You don't know who, even if you know it's my neighbor across the street.
That's
Nobody-
true for speeding and parking and everything.
Mike,
So-
I had that same thought process that you just did, and that's why 6, 8, 10 years ago, we decided we would do an education thing on it, and it just didn't work. You know, there's so much changeover that occurs. You know, it's not like we're creating something new. This is something that's done throughout Western New York, where drivers that are plowing in towns for personal business are required to go into their town hall or highway department and fill out a form and do this exact.
And they have to
exact
list the
program.
address where they're plowing. So if we go back on our list and
I mean, they're going to be adding and they're not going to keep coming in and saying, I'm adding these 5
you're right,
customers.
yeah.
I mean,
And I mean, the guy that comes out and says, I'll give you $25 to plow my driveway. And he says, sure,
right.
you
So,
know,
so I'm not seeing this really, a permit doesn't address, enforcement does. But I mean, a
Other-
police officer is going to drive by a particular address. They're not going to call town hall and say, who's plowing that, and then give them a ticket or reprimand them or whatever. I mean, I'm for smaller government. I mean, if we want to address this issue, just like speeding, you're going to have to catch them in the act, or parking illegally. I'd rather go that route than permitting process.
Okay, so what happens, Mike, is that, and I agree with you, because I had the same mindset when I sat in your chair. And we did a lot of public education, and it doesn't work because there's a lot of turnover, et cetera. So there's an accountability factor that now we have, that if 820 North County is viewed by the highway department and or the police as a driveway that's always pushing snow across the street and putting furrows in across the road, we now can check, and we can call, and we can tell that person that, listen, you are not following the rules and the guidelines of proper plowing. It's against New York state law. When we tell this to drivers now, we get laughed at.
Dick, so if you looked into the laws that the other municipalities have,
Yeah, it's a state law.
but no, I know that's a state, but that's Mike's point, is that's a state law that's enforceable regardless of whether or not we have a permitting process. My question is, what, if any, enforcement measures are there for violation of the permit process if we get it in? Or what if if we know who it is, can we pull their permit? Can we find them? What types of things are we looking at here?
Yeah, so what the municipalities that do this, I mean, Cheektowaga's got one, Lancaster's got one, other local towns have them. What they typically do is add an additional, instead of just relying on VTL provisions and highway law provisions around obstructing highways, add a specific new legal requirement that A, requires a permit, and B, says you can't pile snow in such a way that it'll interfere with traffic or on private property, things that go a little bit beyond that which the law would require. They have penalties for offenses. Here's an example. I don't know if this is the perfect one, but the Cheektowaga one says no person shall plow, shovel, sweep, or pile snow or other materials beyond the right of way or street in any public highway, or cause such to be done and so as to interfere with safety and convenience of the public travel or constitute an obstruction of the sight of persons traveling by vehicle or by foot. Things like that, which,
That sounds like a local law regarding what you can and can't do plowing, which makes
Right,
sense.
right.
It doesn't sound like a permit
so
process.
that one goes on to say that you get to permit, it requires permit required. No person, firm, or corporation shall plow or cause to be plowed snow by use of any vehicle within the town of, this one happens to be Cheektowaga, unless a permit therefore is provided. And that's
I
no
guess
permitting
my
step.
question is, how about the 3/4 of the people that plow their own driveways that do
Yeah.
exactly the same thing?
Yeah,
That's
well,
exact-
but I think Peter's.
So the permitting process really isn't probably fixing half
But-
of the problems.
But if
I-
you.
I don't see it as
if
a
you draft
solution.
that law that has both the provisions that you can't do that, because you're right, there's one guy, I pull on my street every single time it snows, he snow blows his entire driveway out into the road every single time. And I mean, this is most
And it should
definitely
say
a
Snow
problem.
plowing or snow blowing too.
But that it does, it's sweep, but that's my point, is the first part of the law that Peter read is applicable to everybody.
I just don't like the permitting idea. I
Well,
just
I
think
mean,
that's a negative to me, big time.
I like it, but I think if we're gonna do it, we need to make sure that whatever law we prepare has some enforcement, because just saying, oh, you need a permit, isn't going to do anything.
I
And
like
we're
the
not,
idea of a law. I don't like the idea of a permit. That's where
I think you
change.
need both. I mean, you need the law. And if you're going to do the permit, you definitely need the law. I think you're right, Mike. We need the law no matter what, because this is just as much of a problem with Joe homeowner as it is your commercial plowers.
I'm going to
So-
guess if you were to really look into it, most of the problems are the personal,
Yeah.
private plower. I mean, when
But
I think of East River where I live, I know who's doing what. And I'm going to tell you right now, most of the people that are doing
But
it themselves
I-
are the ones, I think most of the
be
hired
s-
plows are doing it right.
No,
But
you'd be
Mike-
surprised. There was
Mike, we're
one
using
guy.
the words guess and most because we don't do this every day. Like
The
we,
guy that
we see the bigger scheme of things and this is their specialty. So Dick, from transitioning to what we did to now being there for a couple years, talking with Skip, starting to see a pattern and a problem. I have two questions. Are you stuck on the $50 per permit? Because I'd like to see us being, I don't want it to look like a money grab.
Yeah. it's-
No,
I want us to be the
I
least
believe we
possible.
We changed that to 25.
Yeah, so we should make it lower because I want us to be
So
the
it's 50 on the
lowest. So
permit.
there's no interpretation. It's just an additional taxation sort of thing.
Mine says 25, so it must be that draft and
I
that
might,
changed.
yeah, okay. So that's probably what it was. Second, I want to be a little clearer on if this is to go forward, what's the transition? So Patty takes care of it. She issues the permit. What about mid-season changes coming off and on and off the list? Does that then transition, does paperwork transition to you and your department handles that?
We would work with the town clerk on the best way to do that.
Because that part could get tedious.
Yeah.
And looking things up. So
No,
that's
the-
where you guys would have to figure out the
Yeah,
load
the
share on
administrative
that.
end of it, other than collecting the fees, I think is the highway department.
Okay.
And Mike, as I said, when I was on the board, I didn't think it was the way to go. But when you're out there at 3:30 in the morning and it's not the mom and pop guy just going and doing his yard and his in-laws yard and stuff like that, there are highly contracted professional landscape companies that do plowing and they do a wonderful service for the residents. The problem is that they are leaving trails of snow all over the road. We go through a subdivision, Colonial Drive, Driftwood, et cetera. And a half an hour after we go through there, the roads are a mess because they don't care. They want to get in, they want to get out. And I understand that, but they have to be more careful. And we have no recourse right now of getting anything done to stop that.
And Mike, for property owners, I mean, growing up where I grew up, there was one guy who every single house he did, he pushed it right across the street. He tore up everybody's grass. All the neighbors were pissed. No matter how many times we called the town, it was, there's nothing we could do. I mean, it really is
And we
more of a
then-
problem than you think.
We then get
That's
the
a
calls.
law and enforcing it by ticketing. I don't see where the permit is required to do
The
that.
permit
I think-
gives
I
people
think-
like the
I think
homeowners who are
ticketing
having
is
the-
a solution.
Having a permit and knowing who to go after gives people like homeowners the opportunity to go after the people who are doing damage to their property if they need to, because they can identify them.
I
I'm
mean,
not up at
if we're
3
going to
o'clock.
require every snowplower to provide us a list of all the homes that they're doing, I don't think that's a reasonable request. I really don't. And then to try and maintain that, it's going to be an unreasonable request.
They get contracts in the beginning of the year. If they want to do it,
How does this affect the private person who has a plow on their truck that calls your driveway?
Doesn't affect them at all. I
They
mean,
need to get a permit?
no, I don't, like with every law that we're pointing out all the ambiguity, there's so many holes. There's so many holes in the current laws right now that the cops will not stop anybody because they don't see them doing it.
I think it's probably a bit unrealistic to think that we can get this into shape by November 1st, but I think we can get Peter on drafting a law with a permitting process and we can refine, I think, what we want as far as both a law and debate whether or not we want the permitting process and go from there.
Fair enough.
I think we all agree that at least we should probably do something with a law, right?
I'm okay with the law and enforcing the law, but the permit doesn't seem to add much value in my opinion. It creates work and hassles for the residents.
But again, it also protects them.
Take away if somebody is a repeat violator, instead of ticketing and showing offenses, charging with offenses. The reason why a permit is so that somebody, you could take the permit away and then they wouldn't be able to do
multiple tickets.
But I'm with
more
Mike.
Yeah, but
The
the law-
reality is you can take the
If you
permit away
have-
and they're
if you
not
have-
going
if
to
you have
stop.
to, if it requires, the law requires a permit to plow, it also will have a penalty associated with it. So it can be brought before a judge then and fined accordingly.
So you really think that we're going to be saying, we're going to revoke that person's plowing permit? And then even if we do, I think we're going to have.
I
an
think it's something we,
extremely
you know,
tough time
let's,
doing that.
there's
So that's
plenty of
where
other
the
towns that
value-
have this legislation on their books.
This is why I think
We can
it's-
interact with them first.
Yeah.
Find out if it's successful, what the pros, what the cons are, and we can move forward.
Well, we-
Successful would mean how many times have they ever had to remove
Exactly.
someone's permit?
Exactly. So let's do some
'Cause I
homework.
know every town has the same problem.
I'm sure you're right. So let's do
these-
some homework and move forward.
The plow drivers too, some are only Grand Island based, but I'm guessing some go over to Tonawanda as well. And right there, they do it. So they're obviously generating these lists and handling it, but yeah, collaborating with other municipalities, come back to us with that data unless you already even have
Well,
talked
that-
with
that-
others.
Well, that's what you have in front of you is the collaboration that we've done over the last 6 months of talking about this
Yeah.
internally and now bringing it to you for discussion to iron out what we need to do and what steps we need to follow. As I stated early on, that we are one of the very few in Western New York highway departments that do not do this. And it hopefully has the potential of not creating as many problems as we have right now. The other problem that we get every spring is that we get phone calls from many residents that we plowed their front yard in, and we don't. I mean, most of the not most, a lot of the mailboxes that get taken down from the snow traveling across the street, we know when that happens. There's other cases where private individuals are hitting them, and we go out and we fix them because we can't say whether we did it or not. But this is a valued attempt to get out and have something out there that's proactive to try to assist us as the highway department to keep the roads clear of snow and to make sure that there's not ice building up. Homeowners could potentially be held responsible for their plow driver depositing snow all over the road and somebody getting into an accident.
So I know there's a lot of things to work out. But I in spirit agree with you. Because I tend to drive around frequently right after it snows, and to call it a hot mess would be kind. Okay, it's a wrap. People leave snow over the road and it's dangerous. I've seen people hit it, and it's not good. I've also seen people plow excessive packed snow over the storm drains, which is also not good because they don't know where they are. That doesn't work out for us, for anybody. But it's just where the line starts and where the line ends. It's going to be an important discussion.
Sure.
What is the penalty? That's the discussion. You know, I think you'll find that there's more good eggs than bad,
Oh, there's no question about it.
you know, and
No question.
unfortunately, everybody's got to take a beating because there's some bad eggs. But it's good to have the conversations. I don't really know what to do about it, but something should be done. So I guess let's continue to talk about it.
Yeah, look forward to working with you
You
to
know,
iron
But
this
I'll
out.
also
and-
tell you that a snow blower is equally as dangerous to put the snow on the road as
We-
a plow truck.
We stop people all the time.
Yeah.
And for a week or two, they comply with the law and then they just go back to putting it out there.
Yeah, and that's pretty much a residential operator. That's not a commercial operator.
Correct.
So that's going to be a whole other level of discussions.
And typically, when we explain to them what the law is, usually there's good dialogue. So,
Okay.
All right. Okay.
thank you.
Thanks, Dick.
Did Patty get a copy of that?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, all right, okay. Next item on our agenda was GIS monthly meeting. Jen,
So Karen Terrine's been working really hard. She started with the water department, has their break history and their valve and hydrant audit apps completed. They're really happy. They may convert to a standard, more like in the Esri design format. But we're gonna see, the next two things are, Mike Brown and John Podlucky are gonna be working with Karen on some stuff for wastewater. I said, don't go over 20 or 25 hours just because of budget. And we may do a little bit with the COVID app that we made that we get full reimbursement for, just because there's some neat parks kind of applications or neat things related to it. And Tom Dworak wants Natalie and Dave Cole working on that. Dave, just because he's going to be there for so long, has an interest in Natalie, like an administrative role. So Kevin Cabello actually had the idea, because we're all at the front of this, and a lot of the questions one department head ever has may be similar, and we don't want to replicate those conversations or conference calls or anything. Kind of having a monthly meetup where we can call Karen for 15 minutes or share best practice. We all have the same questions at this stage. So I thought Kevin's idea was a good one, him wanting to make sure that everybody's involved in the process and it unfolds in a uniform fashion, getting the right editors and viewers into all of the data. So I wanted to let you know that that's kind of where we're at with it, and see if, because any of these things could have two board members. Does anyone want to be looped in on when those are and commit to attending those as well? John's come to some things with me with that. Tom's come to some things. Anybody want to be involved?
I would be interested. So let me know the dates.
Okay,
Great.
I'll just send it to the whole town board, and then we can figure out dates and times for that. I think that's all.
Okay, great. Thank you. Item number 4 was a sidewalk district, and this is just for discussion. I was approached by a resident on Grand Island Boulevard about creating a sidewalk district for the newly installed sidewalks that are out there. Just wanted to bring it up to your attention that it was brought to my attention, and open it up for discussion regarding it.
That's for paying for plowing, or what's the purpose?
It would basically be that, yes, we'd have to have the
For the
town
maintenance of it.
clean the
Whether
sidewalks.
it's plowing, if something breaks, sidewalk breaks, it's like a lighting district basically,
Yeah,
but for sidewalks.
right.
Peter, we have a sidewalk law.
We do.
Okay. I mean,
The homeowners are responsible for
well,
maintenance.
right, the
under
property owner.
Current
Yeah,
law, property owners.
I think this, it
Um,
makes sense to me. I think it helps. It ensures that sidewalk. is
Some of
gonna-
the issue is some of the locations that we have, because we installed sidewalk all the way past Fantasy Island, which is now vacant.
mhm.
A lot of the land is vacant where we installed sidewalks. So the question is, who's going to maintain that?
Well, it's still on the property owner because of the sidewalk
Right,
law.
but when the
that's-
property
They'll
owners in
get done.
Arizona, they really don't
Right.
have too many snow blowers.
And that's why I think it makes sense
They'd have to
because
contract it, I guess.
we can ensure that it's done.
Yeah.
Not, we can defer the cost by charging it to the property owners who are responsible for it anyways, then.
Right.
So when we do this sidewalk district, does it go broader than just snow maintenance, or,
No. Yeah,
I-
it would.
but, so if we do the sidewalk district, is it also going to include maintenance?
Peter, I think it would probably,
Let's look more broadly. There is specific, I looked, because the question that I saw circulated this week touched on snow removal. I looked briefly at that, and there is specific authority for a sidewalk snow removal district, so that you can do if you wanted to find a specific area. Other, sidewalk charges are, the way we've got our law set up currently, we'd have to think about revisiting a little bit, because the maintenance and installation of these things is currently a charge of the property owner.
Right.
Peter, what about,
I'm good
what-
with that. I wanted to know what this would entail.
what about from a liability standpoint for the town too? I mean, theoretically, the whole purpose of the sidewalk law is because it places liability for a slip and fall on the property owner because they're responsible for removing the snow and ice.
Certainly
By
not.
creating the sidewalk district and taking the responsibility for snow and ice removal, are we then opening the town up to more liability for any slip and falls on those sidewalks?
No doubt. I mean, if we undertake an obligation, we have an obligation to perform it prudently, as you know, Tom. So you're absolutely right.
It's a great
If we
point.
take on the responsibility, if it's not performed well, absolutely somebody could try to make hay with that. So
And It happened in Niagara Falls Boulevard, if I remember correctly, where that person got hit. Yeah,
Well,
that became a big lawsuit.
I mean, we end up in all these claims anyway. There'll be some
Right.
allegation that we could have, should have acted on.
Like
There's a
East
lot of
River
things
with
we
the
get sued
asylum,
for that we shouldn't get sued for and that we successfully defend. But point is, if we wanted to take on the obligation to do it, we'd have to do it and do it right. And, you know, like anything else, anybody can sue anybody for anything.
I mean, I guess I think before if we kick it around, I think we need to start talking about, you know, what it's going to cost. Because the town, I mean,
no, you're right.
a lot of what would be in the sidewalk district is stuff that we own anyways. I mean, everything around this building, a lot of the places going down, and a big chunk of it is going to be on us anyways.
For this phase.
So I think we need to figure out what,
Yeah, and we just gained some more sidewalk that we have to maintain, which
Right.
is the back end of the highway department does extend out to Grand Island Boulevard.
so.
And the next phase coming.
And then there's
will be
vacant
more.
land in there also that's, unknown.
So I think we need to, take a look at what it would cost, what it would.
There's pros and cons. That's why I wanted to bring it to you guys and we can start
So-
thinking about it.
There's been a lot of discussion about this, even before the sidewalks went on Grand Island Boulevard. It was actually one of my first questions is who's going to maintain it?
Right.
And it was well, we'll figure that out then kind of thing, which was
Well-
great. But there are pluses and minuses, like you said, to a sidewalk district, the town does gain greater liability.
Right.
And you're gonna have to, somebody's got to pay for it.
Oh, yes.
Well, I mean,
You
that-
have to be
right.
assessed back probably by linear frontage foot.
Or sidewalk frontage foot, yes.
Yes, that's what I meant. Yeah.
I mean, and the way the sidewalk's done, I mean, I'll speak for myself because I'm
Right, you're going to be in that
carnal
district.
with it.
You now have sidewalk.
The majority of it is in my parking lot, which I'm gonna maintain.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna pay you to plow it.
And that-
I'll be honest with you, for the 20 feet that need to be maintained, I got it,
Yeah, I know you do.
you
but-
know, so, now you want to raise my taxes to pay for everybody else's? Okay.
Right.
That's cool, I guess.
Not
And that's, I
really.
think, what we need to make clear for anybody who's watching is the proposal is creating a sidewalk district would be like a sewer district or a lighting district where the people who have property where this sidewalk runs through would basically pay extra in taxes and the town would take care of the snow and ice removal. So somebody like Pete.
The
is his
difference
business-
being that most people don't have the ability to maintain a street light, yet most people do own a snow shovel or
Correct.
snow blower or something of that nature.
Especially the guy who happens to own the snowblower repair shop that now has the sidewalk. So we definitely need to dig into it a little bit and
Yep.
see if it makes sense.
Okay.
But
I mean, and also in the discussion, you're saying, let's create a sidewalk district there. Okay, I would actually see the value in it because when the fire truck breaks it, I'm not responsible because then it would be, again, the town's problem. However, why isn't my sidewalk on Tracy Lane in a sidewalk district? How do I get into that? I'll pay more if you got to pay for the sidewalk and you got to clear it. I think we better be careful that we don't open Pandora's box.
You're right.
Yeah.
So.
Considering it beyond anything in this, central business district, residential, anything like that, I think the minuses would far outweigh the pluses. Someone paying in for a decade and a half, maybe sitting there with ones, they're paying for everybody else's and they happen to be at the end of the list. I mean, I love when you talk about small government, Mike, I love that someone can plan to finance when they have to take on that responsibility, not the incremental payment over time and just waiting for their year.
Right.
So, yeah, I wouldn't want to talk about it beyond CBD here.
And then how often does it get maintained? What's the requirement? 3 inches of snow?
You gotta
Do we
salt it?
contract it out?
You gotta salt it?
We got to salt it? Do we have
These
to
are
contract
really
this out?
good
There's a lot of
discussions that we
unknowns in
could have
here.
had last
So
fall.
like I said, this was something that was brought to start thinking about. And I think we can just
Oh,
give it some time and think about it and move on. I don't think we're doing it this year. So
no,
Mhm.
definitely not.
I'm not sure it's gonna be completely done this year.
no, right.
Still pieces missing.
Right.
So,
Pieces.
Okay.
if it's not just food for thought, if it's not going to be done this year, maybe we could engage the Chamber of Commerce as so many of the business, they
Yeah.
might have a good feel on what some of these businesses might want or
Well, I think one thing we need to figure out too is, done or not, we as a town right now have a lot more linear footage of sidewalk that we have to maintain. And we need, Jimmy here has his hands full doing cleaning and disinfecting. Dick's guys have his hands full. So it's October 5th. We ought to start coming up with a plan to at least take care of our own house before we worry about everybody else's.
Oh, I agree.
It has been known to snow in October.
Yes, it
Yeah,
is.
I think the 13th comes to mind.
12th,
Yep.
the 12th.
Is that okay?
It's November, yeah, whatever it was called.
Item number 5 is a conduit for baseline sidewalk project. Tom, you had something on that?
So this is one coming at us. I mentioned it before, I think. Tech Advisory Board is big on this. Their proposal or their request really is to comply with the dig once policy we have. And when we do the baseline sidewalk project, put a conduit in basically behind Mike so that we have conduit covering all of the town's property here between baseline, Whitehaven, and the boulevard in case we're going to do something like an electronic sign, lights, whatever it is. We'd have to get an idea as to what it costs. I think it's worth looking into. I can't imagine it's going to be all that much for a
Like
few
a
hundred
hundred
feet.
and what was it? $28,000
Yeah,
for
that
the other
was-
one?
That was to do
For
how
the
much?
conduit that goes nowheres? I'm not. With 5G up on the poles soon, I just don't know why are we putting conduit in? I'm just not convinced it's a great idea. And it is not cheap to do.
It's not terribly expensive. It was what, just under
125,000 is
To do
almost
how
half of
much?
your annual increase you can
We
do
did.
on taxes.
Yeah, to do how
We did
much?
a much longer piece.
You're talking
there.
about a couple hundred feet here, just to give us the capability to do stuff if we want for our residents, not
So
I
they
we're
thought
want,
you were talking the
No,
the
just-
baseline.
just
Just right
baseline
in
to
here.
just this small section of it, not the whole thing.
Oh,
Based
I
on the
thought you
web,
were,
isn't it?
I thought you were talking all the way to Webb.
No, they're talking what the Tech Advisory Board is baseline from the boulevard to Whitehaven, just to complete our little triangle here. So that we at town, in case we do something with the town commons fire hall, so that we have access to it, not doing the whole thing. Sorry, Mike.
I thought it was. whole-
No, no,
I
not the
assumed
whole
it
thing.
was
I
the whole.
apologize.
Are they going to have to push under the fire hall driveway, our driveway?
well, we can ask
I would
them what
think.
it would
Those are,
cost.
we already have sidewalks there. That's the issue. I mean, now you're just, we're doing,
Aren't they
it all-
redoing a chunk of them though? As part of the project? I think they are.
I have to look at the drawings. I
I
haven't
think
seen
they're
those.
doing.
Well, if some is kept, it could still be tricky. But we can find, I mean, they're asking us to find out what it would cost
Right.
and if it's
I think
viable.
we should at least.
So we can ask for that when we do it, right? Just to get the number.
I guess that's still my question. What would the conduit be used for?
Right.
Because we can see new technology coming. They're already talking 6G and it's on a pole.
Yeah.
It's not under the ground anymore. It's going to be up on a pole.
But Mike,
above
anybody
ground.
in the field will tell you, no matter how good wireless gets, it's never going to beat having a wire connecting two things. All of those wireless things you have, they run on wires running from point A to point B.
Well, 5G is pretty fast.
In 5G is powered by
6G is
fiber optic
coming
cables
already.
connecting the wireless points.
Let's get a price and we'll talk about it again.
I agree.
Make a motion to send it to engineering and,
Yeah, let's do that.
all right, I'll make,
5G
Refer it to
wise,
engineering
it
for-
will
to develop a
require no
price.
wires In the sections we're talking about.
Right.
So make a motion to authorize engineering to create an RFP for the conduit
from,
say your points.
Well, I think
on
we can just,
baseline.
can't we
roads
just have them
and-
do an informal thing based on the cost off the existing one?
Yeah, we would know per foot.
Yeah, I
what
think
the
they can,
cost
yeah.
is.
I mean,
I mean, I'm
no,
sure the
Yeah.
more, the per foot cost is probably decreases as the number of feet increases,
it
but we
does.
can get a gauge.
Probably
It
the
does because you
opposite.
have mobilization, demobilization, which is a
Right.
one-time deal.
Right.
Mhm.
No, it's the
Yeah,
more
you're-
footage
you're-
you do, the cheaper it'll be
Right,
per foot. That's what I was saying.
correct.
We're
Yes.
asking
All
the-
right. Well, let's start with having engineering see if they can ballpark and we'll go from
Sure.
there.
There we go.
Are you getting
All right. I don't think
quotes?
we need emotion for
No,
that, do
we're
we?
gonna just
No.
have, we'll
Okay,
talk.
just
to
to
them.
do.
restate what you want engineering to do. You want to obtain quotes? You want
Tom's
to?
going to work with engineering to
No,
get a
we're
quote for
gonna
the,
Right.
Get an informal.
Okay.
An informal estimate from engineering and then we'll determine whether or not we want to put it out.
you could take it back to Tech Advisory Board
Got
too.
it. Thank you. And that was made by Marston?
Was it a
Uh,
motion?
There wasn't a motion.
No-
We're
no
just gonna do
motion.
No,
it.
we're not.
Nah.
No
We're
motion.
not doing any
No.
motion.
This
All
is
right.
just an
It's just a
investigation
referral.
or
All right.
look and see.
Deeper dive.
Thumb dive.
Okay, under item number 6, seeker review for certified auto brokers. They have a project before us and the brief description of the proposed action is the redevelopment project consists of construction of a 15,310 square foot automotive sales and service building Development will include outdoor car storage areas, 51 new parking spaces, and utility improvements. Site is currently occupied by 2 separate structures. The existing 2-story multi-use building located in the north to the northwest will be demolished. The existing certified auto brokers building located to the southeast will remain and be incorporated in the construction of the new sales service building. Site is located on the northeast side of Grand Island Boulevard, approximately 400 feet northwest of State of the Road in the town of Grand Island. Total site acreage is 2.365 acres, of which approximately 2.24 acres will be disturbed. They have filled out the short environmental impact statement, and the lead agency portion of it on part 2 says there are no or small impacts. All those boxes are checked. There are no moderate or large impacts that may occur. I'll entertain a motion to process a negative declaration for this project.
So moved.
So,
Second,
so why aren't we doing this during the regular meeting and why isn't it on the agenda?
It is.
it is, and it is. Because we'll pat, this is just the seeker. If you look in the old business, those both the storage and the certified auto are an old business. There was a time frame issue where we couldn't pass it when it was in the agenda packet. So it's pretty typical even.
Well, the
in
site
past.
plan is, but I don't see
Yes.
the seeker.
No, correct.
Yeah,
We're just doing a secret
yeah.
review. We do them in workshops all the time.
That's when we would typically do our seeker so that we can then take the action on the other.
I think seeker should really be done during the regular meeting. I thought we weren't going to
These are considered regular meetings.
These are not.
motions during the meeting, the workshop only upstairs.
But do you remember that we had those packets before and we couldn't act because of time frame issues where there had enough time hadn't passed when certified and Hugo came before us? That's why it ended up in old business for nothing other than that. Just my recollection of the situation.
I mean, I really think for seekers and everything else, I really think the motion should be done in the general meeting as part of regular business. That's my thinking on it, as part of the discussion here.
These are regular meetings, right?
This is a meeting.
I was,
These are regular meetings.
Right.
They're workshop meetings, but they are official town board meetings.
and these,
I think we as a board had agreed that we would try to do these types of things in the general, which is
Any issue with
typically
that?
more public meeting.
I don't really
Okay.
care when we do them. I was
Yeah.
That
told,
doesn't cause me any heartburn. I will-
frankly, I asked engineering the same question as to why we were talking about putting this on the workshop. And I was told that these forever had been done at special workshops at 8:30 in the morning. So
They have
doing
been.
them here is a
And
much,
we
is even better.
discontinued- We did discontinue that
So-
practice, just to be clear.
And we're doing it at a live Zoomed meeting. So if you want to do it at the regular meeting, I'll defer. I have no problem with that.
I mean, that's.
Okay, so we'll do
my
it at the regular meeting.
preference,
That's fine.
Because I do think that,
Okay,
Well,
understood. Moving on.
no, we're gonna,
Safety needs assessment. Jen,
no.
we're gonna
The
run
motion
into a
was already-
situation because they're gonna be under old business.
they're on the, and they're
Right.
still on the agenda. We
But then
can do
we're
it.
gonna suspend the rules after.
No,
we
you
won't
don't
be able
have
to
to
act.
suspend.
It's on,
No, it's on the
It's on the
agenda. It's
agenda.
unfinished business.
even under
It's
unfinished
on the
business, we can
agenda.
still do what we want with it.
It's on
So
the
we can
agenda.
do it.
Okay, so we'll do it another. Okay.
Yeah, really, it's already on the general meeting. I mean, you can add a motion onto
Right.
the,
It's on unfinished business. We can act on
so
it if
it's
we
really
need
not
to,
a big deal.
whether
And
it's,
I would really like us to try and adhere to keeping all the motions within a 2-hour frame or the regular meeting frame rather than during the workshop. Workshop, we kind of research. Regular meeting, we do the motions. So
Well,
that it's more public.
I mean, I agree with you, but I think the idea was that these are more,
These are pretty mundane.
Well, seekers can be pretty contentious too.
I know.
They
We're
can
not
be-
doing South Point at this meeting.
What's that?
We're not doing South Point at this meeting.
Yeah, no, I'm.
I mean,
that's
these
not-
are
I'm just
pretty-
talking, they
these are
can be
pretty mundane.
contentious.
Okay, we'll do them at the regular meeting.
Do you know what I mean?
I mean, if it's on the agenda, why not just do it there?
Because we suspend the rules after the old business, we'd be suspending the rules to do the seeker after the site plan is listed under
No,
old business.
I
No, it
think
won't.
you can suspend the rules at any point, can't you?
It's on the
I mean, there's no
agenda.
rule that.
There
says
are
you
no,
can't.
you don't have to suspend the rules
agenda.
during a workshop. We don't have,
It-
No,
it's-
I'm
Workshops
saying
are-
during the
Table
regular
pending seeker,
meeting, we
yeah.
can suspend the rules and add an item to the agenda at any point in the meeting. I don't know of anything that would stop us from doing that.
no, and there's nothing prohibiting from us from
It's on
acting
the
on it
agenda.
now. I mean, the reality is that the issue in large part with doing things during workshop is nobody was there. Now, at least it's there for anybody to see. I mean, I'm not saying that gives us we should do it, but something like this that's ministerial and not, there's,
A seeker isn't always ministerial. You'd never know.
But
if
these are.
Someone in the public wanted to
Mike,
say.
we
make a
agreed to
comment.
move it to
Well,
the
no,
regular
I
meeting.
agreed. I was fine with that. I
we've all agreed. I'm just telling you.
Drew
Okay.
kept going on it, so I was
So
responding to him.
we're moving forward. Safety needs assessment.
John, Dick and I have been meeting with the collaborative team, Joe, Judy, who am I missing? Bob. Really just looking that now that COVID has passed, getting back on track with where we left off with security. Where we left off, maybe February or March, was sending out a request for proposals related to a wide-scale review of the needs within our town and a plan to accomplish our safety and security goals. So we received 3 responses. Our time frame to look over those is from now until the 15th. They range in price by over $40,000, 25,000 up to 60-something thousand. And the scope of work they would do also is a range as well. I think John said he was going to forward those on to everyone today.
And I didn't.
So I have hard copies just so we don't waste paper. If anybody wants to look at those 3 before the next meeting, I'll leave them in the town boardroom if anyone wants to leaf through. But we're going to come back together on the 15th and see what we like, what we don't like, and then figure out next steps. What am I missing, gentlemen?
I think that's good. I think that's good.
So they'll be on the table in the town boardroom.
Sounds good.
Okay.
you're still going to send them around.
Sorry.
You're going to email them when you
Yes,
remember?
and John will email them.
I'll make sure Rhonda reminds you.
Someone will have to remind me. I apologize for
No
that.
problem.
Today got away from me. It got kind of
Sure. it was
quite a few
just
things
today.
that went on.
That's all.
That concludes the regular business portion of our workshop agenda. I will entertain a motion to go into executive session for legal advice with respect to some lawsuits that we have, personnel issue.
Are we going to come back out to do the contract?
I was gonna
We'll
say,
do that and we'll suspend the rules.
do you want to talk about it a little bit now at least?
God, I thought you want to do that in workshop. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it wouldn't hurt to just mention it and then we can do it during the regular
For
meeting.
the-
Water.
Yes,
The
I know.
pro
but
court.
I was
I'm
gonna-
sorry.
We're going to do it and then suspend the rules and do it at the regular.
During the
meeting.
regular meeting.
Okay.
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 Got it.
All right.
So
well, So moved.
Motion
Second,
by
Jen.
Jen Baney, second by Tom DeGatti. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Aye.
Aye.
That motion carries unanimously. Okay.